Hey everyone, welcome to Billion Stories. China's growth prospects are severely hit by extremely tight COVID-19-based economic sanctions that have been imposed to try and contain the Omicron virus. The U.S. Federal Reserve risks turning a booming economy into a bust. Europe's households are suffering from a serious cost of living crisis. And it is worse in some poor emerging markets where food crises and even famines are likely to happen. These four different but imposing problems each haunt the global economy as it recovers from the pandemic, and it is not surprising that the mood is getting increasingly dark. After a six-quarter growth cycle following a short and steep recession caused by COVID in late 2020, the U.S. GDP declined by 1.4% in the first quarter of this year, suggesting that the United States is slowing down. Some economists were surprised at this decline, but it is an indication that the U.S. economy is beginning to slow down. It's possible that the economy will slow down more during the coming year, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. If we slow down our economic growth, we should have a better inflation rate as demand for goods and services slows, says Carl Ludwigson, managing director of Bel Air Investment Advisors in Los Angeles. If that happens, we may experience a more severe economic depression. It's possible that our economic growth will slow too much, leading to a recession. Robin Brooks, chief economist at the Institute of International Finance, says a number of recent shocks indicate that the world economy is already in trouble. According to him, we're having another global recession alarm, except this time we think it's for real. Americans are increasingly concerned about such an outcome. 8 out of 10 people surveyed by Allianz believe that current world tensions could cause the economy to go into recession, and only a quarter of people think that the economy will improve this year. Economists surveyed by the Wall Street Journal last month put the probability of a global recession, or a sharp economic slowdown, in the next 12 months at 28%. Financial markets are scared. They have feared that the global economy would be in a deep recession. In the past week, the MSCI Emerging Markets Index has fallen by more than 1.5%, while it has fallen by more than 5% in May, and by more than 18% since a peak in early January. Dhaval Joshi, chief strategist at BCA Research, says that along with the downturn in stocks, there have been sell-offs in bonds, inflation-protected bonds, industrial metals, gold, and crypto assets. Defining a global recession is not easy. Many countries define recessions very broadly. Some economists define a recession as 2 consecutive quarters of decline in gross domestic product. In the U.S., this is more vague. The Financial Times would prefer a definition that allows for more flexibility, as does the U.S., where the National Bureau of Economic Research defines recession as a significant decline in economic activity, lasting more than a few months. Definitions become even more difficult on a global scale. The IMF and World Bank prefer to define a global recession as one in which average global citizens experience a drop in real income. In addition, 1975, 1982, 1991, 2009, and 2020 represent the dates of the last 5 global recessions. Though the official growth forecast for 2022 is far from being realistic, the IMF expects global growth to be around 3.6% this year. This is in line with what they expect to happen in the recovery that took place in the second half of 2021 and what they expect to happen in 2022. Whilst estimating the fund's growth for 2022, it has already cut its forecast from 4.5% in October last year to 2.5% in April this year. The economists watch other indicators to see if a recession is coming or if one has already begun in 2022. Keep an eye on 3 factors, that is rising inflation, a declining yield curve, and geopolitical instability. Number 1. High inflation. High inflation usually precedes periods of recession. With prices going higher, consumers, the engine of U.S. economic growth, won't be able to spend as much. It can lead to more people staying at home and can cause fewer sales in stores and less orders in factories, which can indicate that the economy is in recession. According to the Consumer Price Index report released in May, consumer prices were up 8.3% over the past year. It follows an 8.5% increase in March, which marked the largest increase in 40 years. Number 2. A negative yield curve. A yield curve is a way for bond investors to gauge the return they will get from buying bonds that have different maturities in a different way. When shorter duration bonds, such as a 2-year Treasury note, have a higher yield than bonds that mature at the same time as a 10-year Treasury note, that is a sign that bond investors are doubting the direction of the U.S. In early April, the yield curve briefly dipped into negative territory, suggesting the yield curve has been flattening. Number 3. Geopolitical uncertainty. In a global economy, political instability in one country can have very serious economic effects on other countries. Due to conflict in Ukraine and ongoing concerns about the spread and mutation of coronavirus, international trade is highly uncertain. While gas prices continue to climb, the effect of sanctions against Russia will cause prices to rise even further. The global economy's growth potential is now expected to slow from 4.1% to 3.2% for the year, according to the World Bank. Kevin Zai, a senior economist with the Australian government's Commonwealth Bank, says that the Chinese economy showed very little growth in April. The economic outlook will depend crucially on whether or not COVID develops, but it is extremely likely that falling unemployment and a weaker private sector will depress demand for goods and services, which will eventually slow growth. The U.S., a major powerhouse in the world economy, is also suffering from the pandemic legacy of excessive fiscal stimulus, which led to very high inflation even with modest energy price increases. Amid a very tight labor market, the Federal Reserve has had to concede an error and is imposing a significant reduction in its monetary policy to slow growth and bring inflation down. On the other side of the Atlantic, Europe is also suffering from an equally difficult situation. In the UK, inflation is caused by higher energy prices, not overheating the economy as we see in the US. It is a problem that is directly related to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Unfortunately, understanding the causes of Europe's problems does not alleviate its consequences. Inflation reached 7.4% in April, causing Eurozone prices to rise much faster than the average incomes of its citizens. This will hurt people's living standards, which will limit their ability to spend money in the recovery from the pandemic. The Commission expects the economy to come out of this difficult time and grow at about 0.5% per quarter over the course of the summer, but many economists think that the hit to income will have more lasting effects than that. Christian Scholz, an economist at Citi, says that the European Union is presenting an optimistic forecast, and there is more than a chance that there will be virtually no economic growth for the rest of the year. In contrast to Europe's difficulty adapting to higher energy prices, developing countries face even greater difficulty dealing with the rapid rise in food prices, which accounts for 30% of expenditure in emerging economies. Black Sea ports, which Ukraine uses to export grains, are currently closed, so fears of a food crisis later this year are growing. When Sri Lanka decided this week to default on its foreign debt for the first time, it epitomized the dire choices faced in many of the world's poorest countries. To import fuel, food, and medicine, it said it was necessary to use its hard currency. Meanwhile, India intensified the problems in other emerging economies after going back on its promise not to ban grain exports this week. This year, wheat prices have risen more than 60%. As recession risks rise, a Russian withdrawal from Ukraine and the end of China's zero-COVID strategy would be the best news for the global economy. It is not within the ability of economic ministers and officials to handle these difficult situations, so they will once again have to fine-tune their response. This involves reducing the impact of higher food and energy prices in European and emerging economies. These include raising benefits and subsidizing food and energy in countries with sufficiently strong public finances. It is likely that the US and UK will tighten monetary policy faster, while China will limit the negative effects of an Omicron coronavirus outbreak. Ines McPhee, chief global economist from Oxford Economics, says it's not hard to see the global economic expansion being halted just because there is sluggish growth and policymakers have to decide how much more stimulus is needed. But he says the recession isn't likely to happen soon. Policymakers have tools to stop doing things to stimulate growth. If they get worse, we're seeing recession risks rise in the coming years. Currently, they aren't that high, McPhee says. Remember that a slowdown in the economy does not always mean a recession, and that recessions are part of modern economic cycles. Many firms will go out of business when the recession comes, but other firms will boom and expand as a result. Peter Earle, a fellow at the American Institute for Economic Research, says, "I don't think there is any definitive evidence in any of these indicators. You look at the history of economic indicators, technical, or those are easy to see, so many times they've spiked and nothing has happened." I hope you found this video useful and informative. Please give us a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe because more incredible content is on the way. Thanks for watching.